I totally relate with this idea of like the confirmation bias when it comes to diving into data and having like using data to reinforce what you already believe instead of analyzing data to find something new, discover new insights, and bring that to other people. We often go searching for evidence to support assumptions that we already have to back up like our existing thinking. And like you said, that could be really dangerous. How do you see this playing out day to day in marketing orgs? Like what role should marketing ops or just like data operations teams play in protecting the org from this happening? Like, is it a gatekeeping thing? Is it education? Is it guardrails? Kind of all of the above? What are
I
your
mean, look,
thoughts
my
there?
opinion is that sort of for organizations that have some scale, what I'm about to say will not apply to companies that have there's like one person who like works in the data and, so not for like super small kind of organizations, but organizations that have real infrastructure. You should have, what some companies call the data steward, right? So people who understand the data and are responsible for it. And when a business leader has a question, they should send the question to the person who understands the data to then translate the question in English into SQL, let's just say, right? Or whatever OLAP tool they're using, whatever kind of BI tool they're using. They'll understand the question and the business intent of the question, find the best way to kind of dimensionalize it with existing data, and then come back with both a data exhibit, right? That tries to, approximates a direct answer to the question, but then also some interpretation that says, look, this is what I see. Be aware that, the reason it doesn't go beyond this is that we didn't capture whatever. And, so here's what I think the answer to your question is, supported by these data with the following caveats, right? And you'll get an answer like that. Now, not all business people like that answer. Some people just want, give me the number, tell me yes, or whatever. And that's a maturity. It's a,
Mhm.
some people don't have a tolerance for, or have a low tolerance for uncertainty. And they want the database to give them every answer. I do think there's like a continuum of people's attitudes or their relationship with data. There are some people who believe very strongly in their own instincts, and the data that they want to validate their instincts with the data, and that leads to this confirmation, sort of phenomenon over time. On the other extreme, there's people who like are big believers, or like they're almost evangelical about like, we're going to test everything and we're going to do experiments and we're going to gather all the data and the data will tell us, right? And there's that other extreme where
Mhm.
it's almost like there's no intuitive value, right? We're going to let the data guide us. And then they won't be able to make a decision until they have not just every like cell in the experiment populated with, n equals 200 or whatever. By the way, central limit theorem says you only need 30 n in any given cell. But the point is that they will just gather data. I took one of my years ago. I worked at a $7 billion retailer as the CMO, and I came in, and you know the head of merchandising, who left right around the same time I came. I didn't really work with the guy, but he used to commission research, and he would do like 9,000 respondents in his research. And the reason that he would do that was he wanted to be able to do crosstabs of any given cell of anything that he could dream up later and have statistically significant results because, and this is again, the guy on the other end of the spectrum, he just didn't his relationship with data was not one where he could like make an assertion that was kind of supported by the data. Right. So I think you see this kind of this continuum. You got some people who like give this like superficial nod to the data by like double checking that what they were already going to do is somewhat supported by the data. And then you got other people who like can't make a decision. They're like paralyzed until the data tells them what to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of those is the right, place. I mean, I think where you want to end up is you recognize the data as a tool, right? It has certain kinds of uses. And by the way, analytics and analytical methodologies are also tools that you apply to the data. And so you have a toolbox of things, and you work with imperfect data. You work with somewhat dirty data. You make the best assumptions you can based on your experience and the data, right? And you try to make good decisions using the data. But all of those tools, knowing how to use them, and the limitations of your own data, those all require a level of sophistication on the part of the user. And so that ultimately what I'm saying is, you know, data is super important. Strategically, it makes the difference between, um, sort of mediocre results and extraordinary results. When I was working in the casino industry before the retailer, there was a quote. It was like the Wall Street Journal, like wrote, like they took a quote that I had given in a speech, and it was like a bold assertion I made. What I basically said was that the ways that the sophistication and use of, um, of customer data was more valuable than a gaming license. And you have to understand, in the gaming industry, like the casino entertainment industry, gaming licenses are like, they could cost you $500 million or $1 billion. So for me to go out there and say that, the skill set around enterprise mastery of data was more valuable, like I was making quite a statement, and I didn't intend to make the waves that I made with that statement in the speech that I gave, but it got quoted, and I got a couple of phone calls after that. But I stand by it. I stood by it then, and I stand by it now. Um, you know, y- the skill set and tool set, and sophistication that organizations have around making strategic and intelligent use of their data is the difference between kind of just chugging along and leading your industry.